They had everything the world dreams about: fame, fortune, screaming fans, and lives that looked untouchable under the spotlight. But behind the flashing cameras and red carpets, danger was already closing in. In just one horrifying moment, luxury cars became wreckage, roaring engines turned into deadly silence, and global icons vanished forever. Some crashes were called accidents. Others still leave chilling questions unanswered. These are the celebrity deaths so shocking, so tragic, that millions still can't forget the night everything changed. Cozy Powell. In the thunderous world of rock and heavy metal, few drummers commanded as much respect as Cozy Powell. Known for his explosive power behind the drums, Powell built a legendary career playing with some of the biggest names in rock history, including Rainbow, Black Sabbath, and Whitesnake. His style was loud, fearless, and unmistakable. Every strike of the drum felt like a lightning bolt driving the music forward with unstoppable energy. For decades, Cozy Powell was considered one of the greatest rock drummers of his generation. But on April 5, 1998, that powerful rhythm came to a sudden and tragic stop. That night in Gloucestershire, England, Powell was driving his Saab 9000 along the M4 motorway. The weather was rough, rain falling steadily as cars sped through the dark highway. But Powell's car was moving dangerously fast. Reports later suggested he had been traveling at extreme speed. Then, in a terrifying moment, everything spiraled out of control. The car suddenly lost traction on the wet road. At high speed, the vehicle swerved violently before veering off the motorway. Within seconds, the Saab slammed into a concrete bridge support with devastating force. The impact crushed the front of the vehicle, leaving the wreckage almost unrecognizable. Emergency crews rushed to the crash site, but there was nothing they could do. Cozy Powell died instantly. He was 50 years old. Johnny Horton. In the late 1950s, country music had a storyteller whose voice could turn history into legend: Johnny Horton. With powerful hits like The Battle of New Orleans and North to Alaska, Horton mastered a rare gift. He could transform real historical events into epic songs that felt larger than life. His deep voice, dramatic storytelling, and unforgettable melodies made him one of the biggest country stars of his time. To millions of fans, Johnny Horton didn't just sing songs, he brought history roaring back to life. But on November 5, 1960, that powerful voice was silenced in a devastating tragedy. That night, Horton had just finished performing at the Skyline Club in Austin, Texas. After the show, he climbed into a car with his band members, Tommy Tomlinson and Tillman Franks, beginning the long drive toward Shreveport, Louisiana. The highway stretched ahead through the quiet Texas night. For a while, it was just another road trip between performances, the kind musicians made all the time. Then suddenly, disaster struck. As the car crossed a bridge near Milano in Milam County, Texas, another vehicle appeared in the wrong lane. Within seconds, the two vehicles collided head-on with horrifying force. The crash shattered metal and glass across the dark highway. Johnny Horton suffered massive injuries. Emergency responders rushed him toward the hospital, but the injuries were too severe. Before doctors could save him, the country music legend was gone. He was only 35 years old. Stacy Trout and Matthew Yeomans. August 7th, 2025, deep in the mountains of British Columbia, where the roads aren't really roads, just rugged trails carved through the wilderness. Stacy Trout and Matthew Yeomans are in exactly where they love to be, far from the city, surrounded by nature, filming another adventure for the audience who have followed their journey. For them, this isn't danger. It's freedom. It's life exactly as they've chosen. They're not inexperienced. This is their job. They've driven through some of the most extreme terrain across continents, building a reputation for skill, ingenuity, and courage. Their vehicles are built for these environments, and their confidence comes from years of pushing the boundaries. Everything about that moment is familiar, controlled, predictable. But nature doesn't follow the rules, and experience doesn't guarantee control. As their vehicle moved along a narrow mountain road, something changed. Maybe the ground gave way, maybe the angle was just slightly off. Whatever it was, it happened in a split second. The vehicle lost balance and nothing could stop what was about to happen. The fall was steep, unforgiving, and inevitable. In seconds, the road below vanished, replaced by a plunge down a treacherous, rocky slope where nothing could slow the descent. Rescue teams arrived later, but by then, the outcome was sealed. What makes this story haunting isn't the recklessness. It's the realization that even when you do everything right, even when you know what you're doing, there are moments when control simply disappears. Sophia Naismith. June 2019, just before 10 p.m. in a quiet suburb of Adelaide. The night felt calm and familiar. Streetlights glowed softly over the sidewalk as Sophia Naismith walked beside her best friend, talking, laughing, living in a moment that felt completely safe. At 15, Sophia had everything ahead of her school sports dreams still taking shape. There was nothing unusual about that evening, nothing that hinted at how suddenly it would all change. Then, without warning, the road broke its silence. A Lamborghini Huracan moving far too fast for that environment lost control and left the street. In a fraction of a second, it crossed a boundary that should never be crossed, jumping the curb and entering a space meant only for pedestrians. What had been a safe sidewalk became the center of something no one could escape. The impact was immediate. One moment, two friends walking home. The next, everything was different. Emergency services arrived quickly, but the outcome had already been decided. Sophia's friend survived, left to face the shock of a moment that would stay with her forever. And for Sophia, a life full of potential ended before it truly began. In the days that followed, the community came together trying to process what had happened. Not on a highway, not in a dangerous zone, but on a sidewalk, a place built for safety. Sometimes the most devastating truth is this: you can do everything right, follow every rule, and still become part of someone else's mistake. And in that moment, everything changes. Singapore. 2023 Stroll qualifying crash. Singapore at night is already intense, but in qualifying the pressure reaches another level. Every lap matters, every corner is pushed to the edge. Lance Stroll finds himself on the brink, fighting to escape the bottom of the timesheets. With just minutes left, he goes all in. The tires are not fully ready, the margins are razor thin, but there is no time to hold back. As he attacks the final sector, the car begins to look unstable. A slight wobble over the curb unsettles the rear just enough to break the balance. At that speed, there is no gradual loss of control. It happens instantly. The rear steps out the car, snaps sideways, and Stroll becomes a passenger. The Aston Martin slams into the barriers with massive force, the impact sending debris scattering across the track. It is sudden, violent, and impossible to ignore. For a moment, everything stops. The session is halted, and attention shifts from lap times to the driver. Then comes the response. Stroll confirms he is okay climbing out of the wreckage under his own power. What remains is the image of a car pushed beyond its limit, in a place where there is no forgiveness. In Singapore, the difference between a perfect lap and a shattered one can be decided in a single corner. Romain Grosjean, through the wall of fire. Bahrain, 2020. The lights go out, and the field surges forward into the night. Romain Grosjean is in the middle of the pack, surrounded by cars, each fighting for position. The margins are tight. The space is limited. One small movement is all it takes. As the cars accelerate down the straight, contact sends Grosjean's car veering sharply toward the barriers at high speed. The impact is immediate and shocking. The car pierces through the barrier and splits apart, erupting into flames in an instant. Fire lights up the darkness as the chassis comes to a stop, partially trapped beyond the guardrail. For a moment, it is impossible to process. The scene feels unreal. The race is stopped immediately, and all eyes are fixed on the fire, waiting for any sign of movement from within. Then, against all expectation, a figure emerges. Grosjean climbs out of the flames, escaping a situation that looked impossible to survive. He walks away with burns, but alive. The image becomes one of the most powerful in modern Formula One. Not just because of the crash, but because of what follows. It reinforces a truth that defines this sport. Danger is always present, but so is the relentless push to survive it. Ayrton Senna. The silence that changed everything. Imola, 1994. The atmosphere feels different, heavier than usual, as the sport pushes forward at relentless speed. Ayrton Senna sits on the grid carrying not just expectation, but responsibility. A three-time world champion, a driver known for precision control and pushing beyond limits. When the race begins, he leads with purpose, chasing perfection on a circuit that offers no forgiveness. Then in a moment, no one expects control is lost. Approaching high speed, the car fails to respond as it should. Senna's Williams continues straight, leaving the racing line and heading directly toward the barrier. The impact is sudden and severe, bringing everything to an immediate halt. The race is stopped. The energy of the event disappears, replaced by a silence that spreads across the track, the teams, and the world watching. What follows is not just an incident. It is a turning point. Senna's crash reshapes Formula One forever, forcing the sport to confront its risks and change its future. Safety measures evolve. Standards rise. His legacy becomes more than victories and titles. It becomes the reason the sport refuses to stand still. Roger E. Mosley. A life that took an unexpected turn. Roger E. Mosley was more than just a familiar face on television. He was a steady presence, a character audiences trusted and remembered. Best known for his role as TC in Magnum P. Wine, Mosley brought warmth, loyalty, and quiet strength to every scene. For years, he wasn't just part of the show, he was part of people's lives, a constant. A voice that felt grounded and real. And even as time passed, that presence never faded. On August 4th, 2022, Mosley was driving in Linwood, California. It was an ordinary day, the kind that carries no warning signs. No cameras, no scripts. Just the rhythm of everyday life moving forward as it always does. In a sudden moment, his vehicle was involved in a severe crash. The impact was life-altering. Mosley survived, but the damage was devastating, leaving him paralyzed from the shoulders down. For a man who had spent his life moving freely, performing, creating, everything changed in an instant. Days passed. The world held its breath. But on August 7th, at the age of 83, Roger E. Mosley was gone. A life full of strength, resilience, and quiet influence ended not in front of a camera, but on an ordinary road. And what lingers isn't just the tragedy, but the unsettling truth that even the most stable journeys can shift without warning. The Shockwave Incident, 1999, Timothy Fan. On August 23, 1999, King's Dominion Amusement Park in Virginia was packed with visitors looking for thrills. Among them was 20-year-old Timothy Fan, who had come to the park with a friend for a day of rides and excitement. One attraction quickly caught his attention. It was Shockwave, a towering stand-up roller coaster where riders remained upright, secured by shoulder harnesses and waist restraints, while the train raced through loops and violent turns at high speed. Fan boarded the 6-car train along with other riders. As the train slowly climbed the lift hill, everything appeared completely normal. The safety restraints were locked, and the ride operator sent the train down the track. Within seconds, the coaster accelerated into its first drops and twists. But witnesses soon noticed something strange. Fan was moving and struggling inside his restraints. At first, it looked like the normal motion riders experience under strong G-forces. But as the train rushed through the course, Fan somehow managed to free one of his arms from the shoulder harness. His body began twisting sideways while the coaster continued speeding through loops and tight turns. The situation grew more dangerous with every second. Near the end of the ride, the train entered a powerful 180-degree curve. The intense forces acting on Fan's body became too strong for him to hold on. In a horrifying moment, he was thrown from the train. Fan was launched nearly 40 feet through the air before crashing onto a metal catwalk beside the track. The impact caused fatal head injuries, and he died instantly. When the train returned to the station moments later, investigators discovered something chilling. His restraints were still locked in place, revealing that he had forced himself partially out during the ride. Shockwave closed briefly after the tragedy, but reopened just 3 days later. Frank Silvera, a fatal shock in the quietest place. He was a versatile actor, a man who could transform himself into countless roles across stage and screen. Frank Silvera built a respected career over decades, known for his depth, intensity, and commanding presence. His life revolved around performance storytelling and control over every character he portrayed. Nothing about his world suggested recklessness or danger, especially not in the place meant to be safest of all, his own home. But in 1970, inside his kitchen, something went terribly wrong. What started as a simple, everyday task quickly turned into a moment no one could have predicted. While attempting to repair a garbage disposal unit, Silvera came into contact with a live electrical current. There was no warning, no dramatic buildup, just one instant where routine met disaster and everything changed. The shock was sudden and overwhelming, leaving no chance to recover. Not a stage, not a risky environment, just a quiet home filled with familiarity. A man who had spent his life mastering complex roles was taken by something so ordinary, it feels almost unreal. It leaves behind a chilling truth. The greatest danger is not out in the world, but waiting in the simplest moments we believe we fully understand. John Eric Hexum, a joke that turned fatal. He had the look, the charisma, and the rising momentum of a star about to break through. John Eric Hexum was young, confident, and quickly gaining attention in Hollywood. On the set of the TV series Cover Up, everything seemed to be falling into place. Long hours, high energy, and the pressure of filming were part of the routine. But like many sets, there were also moments of boredom, where tension eased and seriousness gave way to play. Then came one moment that changed everything. Holding a prop gun loaded with blanks, Hexum began joking around between takes. It felt harmless, controlled, something actors had done countless times before. But in a split-second decision, he placed the gun to his head and pulled the trigger, not realizing the force it could produce at such close range. The impact was immediate and devastating, turning a moment of humor into a life-threatening accident. No malfunction, no complex chain of events, just one impulsive action in an environment that felt safe. A rising career full of promise ended in an instant that was never meant to be serious. It leaves behind a haunting realization. The line between play and danger is thinner than anyone dares to believe. Natalie Wood. The night the ocean took her. She was a star who grew up in front of the world. Natalie Wood carried a timeless beauty and emotional depth that made her unforgettable on screen. From childhood fame to iconic roles, she seemed to move effortlessly through Hollywood's brightest circles. Her life was surrounded by glamour, success, and the constant presence of others. She was never someone you would imagine alone or in danger. But in 1981, during what should have been a quiet getaway off the coast of Catalina Island, something went terribly wrong. The night was calm, the sea seemingly harmless, offering no sign of the mystery that would soon unfold. At some point, Wood ended up in the water. No one could clearly explain how or why. There were questions, confusion, and details that never fully aligned. What began as a peaceful evening turned into a tragedy surrounded by uncertainty. Bruises were found, theories were raised, yet the official conclusion called it an accidental drowning. A life so public ended in a moment so unclear. It leaves behind a chilling feeling. The most unsettling stories are not the ones we understand, but the ones that remain just out of reach, hidden beneath the surface. Brittany Murphy, a mystery that refused to fade. To audiences, Brittany Murphy was magnetic. From her breakout role in Clueless to powerful performances in films like 8 Mile, she brought a rare mix of vulnerability and energy that made every character feel real. She wasn't just acting, she was living inside her roles, and that made her unforgettable. But in the years leading up to her death, something began to feel different. Her appearances became less frequent. Rumors started to circulate. Nothing was ever confirmed, nothing fully explained, but there was a growing sense that something behind the scenes was not quite right. To fans, it felt like watching someone slowly fade from view without understanding why. Then, in December 2009, everything stopped. Brittany was found unresponsive in her home. The news spread rapidly, but the details only made the story more unsettling. Official reports pointed to a combination of health-related factors, yet questions refused to disappear. The circumstances, the timing, even the environment around her all became part of a narrative that never felt completely resolved. She was only 32 years old. What makes Brittany Murphy's story linger is not just the loss, but the uncertainty that followed. Unlike tragedies that offer closure, hers left behind fragments, theories, and unanswered questions. And sometimes the most haunting stories are not the ones we understand, but the ones that never fully make sense. Corey Haim, the illness no one took seriously. In the 1980s, Corey Haim was one of Hollywood's brightest young stars, known for standout roles in films like Lucas and The Lost Boys. With his charm and on-screen charisma, he quickly became a teen icon, capturing the attention of an entire generation. His career continued to grow with films like License to Drive and Dream a Little Dream, solidifying his place in pop culture. But as the years went on, the transition from child star to adult actor brought its own challenges. Behind the fame, Corey faced personal struggles that slowly distanced him from the spotlight. Still, nothing seemed to suggest that his story would end in such a sudden and unexpected way. In the days leading up to his death, Corey reportedly experienced what appeared to be mild flu-like symptoms. It did not seem alarming. A doctor even checked on him and no serious condition was immediately identified. To everyone around him, it looked like something routine, the kind of illness people recover from every day without a second thought. But what no one realized was that something far more dangerous was developing beneath the surface. Those seemingly harmless symptoms were actually signs of pneumonia, a condition that had gone undetected until it was too late. On March 10, 2010, Corey Haim passed away at the age of 38. The shock came not just from his death, but from how easily it had been overlooked. Leaves behind a chilling question that still lingers: how can something that appears so ordinary turn into something irreversible before anyone has the chance to stop it? Catherine O'Hara. Canadian actress Catherine O'Hara died on January 10, 2026, marking the loss of one of the most distinctive and beloved comedic voices in modern entertainment. She rose to prominence through her work on SCTV, where her sharp timing and fearless performances quickly set her apart. But it was her role as the unforgettable mother in Home Alone that made her a household name across generations. With a perfect balance of warmth, humor, and emotional depth, O'Hara created characters that felt both larger than life and deeply relatable. Throughout her career, she continued to evolve, delivering standout performances in films like Beetlejuice and Best in Show, while later capturing a whole new audience with her award-winning role as Moira Rose in Schitt's Creek. Her portrayal of Moira, eccentric, dramatic, and unexpectedly heartfelt, became one of the most iconic television performances of recent years, proving that her talent only grew stronger with time. She had a rare ability to transform even the most exaggerated characters into something real, something audiences could connect with. Catherine O'Hara was more than a comedic actress. She was a storyteller who could make people feel joy, nostalgia, and connection all at once, leaving behind a legacy that continues to resonate long after the final scene.